Welcome to Pub Wisdom. Today I'm going solo. I've just got a few things to say. I tend not to talk too directly to current level politics or things or current level sports kind of stuff. Just to kind of stay in more of a conceptual um, mindscape and not something that's just pinned down in time. However, today I want to talk a bit about uh, the auto industry in general. The UAW is striking, and it's starting to cause some ripple effects to the rest of the economy. Southeast Michigan is always very sensitive to this kind of things, and that's where I'm at. That's where I've worked. I've worked in the auto industry my whole career. People that know me very well know me. I used to be a very, very adamant GM guy. Back in the day, I was a GM guy, a Chevy guy, to be specific. I would, first car, 71 Chevelle, muscle car, all downhill from there. I owned a Camaro that was, a very fun car to drive. Lived down south. I've even worked for GM as a contractor, so I've worked in and around the union as a contractor, and friends will know that I've always been a GM guy. However, moving down south, it was a big eye opener how the rest of the nation does not look at the American auto industry with nearly as much pride as those of us here in Southeast Michigan. And it was kind of disheartening to see that. But my experiences both in and around the auto industry, in and around the UAW, how they work, what's going on, do I agree with them demanding better wages? Yes. Do I agree with them earning a wage that's livable? Definitely. That is a job that definitely consumes all your time. It's a relatively strenuous job, very monotonous in terms of assembly, factory work. Not something I could do easily myself. But with that being said, I've worked in and around the union, and they have some downfalls. And what they are not doing, they're not providing any type of added value, and they need to, because they seem to be unaware of the disruptive change that is happening to the auto industry in general. The way things operate in the competitive market, the newcomers like Tesla and all the Chinese automakers that are coming in, they operate very differently. And if we continue to operate the old ways with the UAW and the way upper management all the way through the big three, the way they continue to operate, it's going to be a slow, maybe quick death for some of them. They may die, they may shrink, and that's going to be detrimental to everyone, and especially those of us in Southeast Michigan. I worked at Ford General Motors a couple times throughout my career under a contract position. And in those times, I've worked in and around the UAW. I very well experienced to some of their work tactics and the inefficiencies that it creates within the company itself. Moving down south, working for another employer, having the realization that the rest of the country doesn't look at the American auto industry as fondly as those of us in Michigan, especially Southeast Michigan. They're not loyal to the big three, and there's good reasons for it. Kind of blinded to it when you're living here. I worked in and around unions. I've seen how they operate, and though I heard a breakdown of it sounds like this: 20% of them are very good, exceptionally hardworking people, very loyal to their cause. 50% of them, I don't know, they're kind of in the middle. They can care less. They just want fair wages for their jobs, and that's okay. The other, 20-30% of them can be a little hard to work with. And I think the UAW has created a safe space where a lot of these people can operate. And they're kind of mean, nasty people. They don't work well with intentions of the betterment of the company, which was better for all. And I've seen that firsthand, and I've heard numerous stories from it. And yeah, in that respect, the UAW needs to get smacked down a little bit, but I think it has. I think it has in the last in the last several years or so. I think since they renegotiated and they're trying to get things back to where they were, I think they're at that level. There's no way, in my mind, any company with top management should be getting any type of bonuses, massive paychecks in a calendar year which they've had to lay people off and or make their current employees suffer or run a very high contract workforce and just drop them at will. It doesn't make any sense. If you think you're successful, you're only successful in the eyes of the shareholders. That is a short-minded way of running things. It is playing an infinite game. It's playing a finite game in an infinite world. Whereas you're just looking for quarterly measures, quarterly numbers, trying to appease shareholders. That doesn't work. That is a short-term gain for long-term loss strategy, and they can only do it for so long. It's only sustainable for so long, and we're seeing the ends of that. You've got a disgruntled workforce that you've been making all your profits on, and they deserve a piece of it. So I am on both sides of the coin when it comes to the union strike. I do think that they need to add some value. And with that, I have some experience at another company where I did work in a union. And I worked for Cummins. I worked for Cummins for 5 years. I was hired into the union. I was able to, they did have a tier system, but that was based a lot on your work experience, your work levels, what you can do. And it was a good system at that time. And it was very well regulated where you could work your way up very quickly. They had 5 levels. I came in as a level 4 because I have prior experience in education and I could do all the tasks they could do. And I very quickly worked my way into a level 5. Now, during recessions and downturns, they went from the bottom up in that tier system, and level 4s, level 5s were pretty well protected in that sense. But of course, they're the more valuable people. So they went with the tier system, and they also went with a seniority as well. So they took seniority on the tier system if it ever came around to layoffs, and they were very good about not doing that. And they also did a great job of making everyone feel like they're the same top to bottom. Everyone had the same shirts, same uniforms, salary personnel, upper management, all the way down to the guys on the floor, which was really cool. They had two unions, one strictly for the factory and one strictly for the technical work, where I was at. And they weren't super strong unions. If you were a person that couldn't do the task and you screwed up way too often, they could get rid of you. Unlike the UAW, who seems to be able to protect those people endlessly and at great cost to the company. Those types of things, I believe, in the UAW need to get looked at. They also need to figure out a way of surviving in the incoming disruptive challenge that's coming to the auto industry. What they need to do, they need to create a greater value for themselves. I've learned this by learning money. And when you learn money, you understand that in order to earn something, you have to create a value that people will pay for. And the UAW has a very tarnished reputation. I've heard many stories of people that had no longer, their job function no longer was there, but yet they could come into work and they could sit in a room all day. People ask, what's that guy doing? Well, his job doesn't exist anymore, but we still got to pay him. Things like that. You need to be able to be flexible. You need to be able to retrain people for different positions and move them in. And the example of that the new age competitors are coming up with is that of what Joe Justice comes up with Agile Systems. And he explains in good detail what Tesla, or what he says Musk companies do. And it's kind of small groups, all hands on deck to the next issue, and doesn't matter what your skill level is or experience or whatever, and you attack that issue. And the end result is you get a very lean, very well-rounded crew that can really manage tasks, manage changes quickly, which is something that the UAW is not good at. The American auto industry in general is not good at. And they're going to suffer if they don't change. Now, the other thing I learned at Cummins is one of their leaders, Irwin Miller, who I've put some videos up with him before, and maybe I'll put some links to that too. Irwin Miller was an impressive leader where he would go and walk the assembly floors and the shop floors, and it's in the video. You see people just looking and they snap their attention when they see him, but he had no problem mingling with them, talking to them, and working with them. But he also understood that when unions formed, he said, we are not going to fight our workforce. We will work with them and help them form a good union. And that's what they did. And as a result, that union to me is a far more successful model, but I think that model needs to be improved yet again for modern times. And I think the UAW needs to take a look at stuff like that. On the flip side, loyalty from the top down, that needs to change too. I work pretty high up at General Motors. What I consider high up is for a technical level. I worked in internal combustion research there. I worked there during a time frame where Mary Barra was still relatively new there. She'd been there a few years in that current role, and she came up with the 000 program. And I thought, excellent, that's the right thing to do. In the same time frame, I was warning people about this company called Tesla that was coming up, and got laughed at quite a bit for that. But a few years later, I'm like, 000 guys, hey, we work in internal combustion research. We can't burn fuel and make zero emissions. It's just not going to happen. Nobody believed me. And within probably a few years of that statement, that whole department's defunct, proving that General Motors is going in that direction because the technology they worked on there was 10 to 15 years out. So that being said, they were going in the right direction. I was still with them. I was still trying to retrain myself with what they had and go into electric motor testing and learn more about electric motors and batteries, and I wanted to make that transition. However, their leadership, in their infinite wisdom, decides just to unilaterally get everyone out of there. And they started with, they went after the old timers and the guys that had some good pensions built up, and they wanted to get rid of them. Most of those guys didn't go. So then all of us contractors gone. Doesn't matter what our position was, what we were trying to do, that we were trying to relearn, learn a new role there, prove our loyalty. And it was made from people that were well up above. That decision was made from people that were well and above where my direct managers were. And they all wanted to hire me direct. And I couldn't get hired direct because they just kept closing doors. And when it came time to let people go, I was let go with the crew. And so that department, from what I can tell or what I know from through listening to the grapevine, they just basically take government money and run tests on things. And so if people want to brag about or harass the EV companies for taking money in subsidies, hey, the big auto has been doing that for years, and just taking government grants and throwing it at development projects that most of the time goes nowhere. Is it good knowledge? Is it good testing? Maybe. Could it be more lean? Could it be done better? I think so. So that being said, when I was let go, it was crushing to me. And I had already been eyeing this company called Tesla, and as a result, I became a big fan and got rid of the GM name. And I became a full-time Tesla fan, with a goal of owning a Tesla someday. Inching closer to that every day, then getting set back, and inching closer, getting set back. Personal journey, but I'll get there. But I've always kept an eye on this company right from the very early days of the Roadster, with my interest of Nikola Tesla. Watch how they operate, watch everything, watch as much stuff I can. Learned a lot from all the YouTubers out there, and it gave me a lot of great insight. I did make transitions, worked for other employers, did as much as I could testing in the automotive world, in the EV space. So new and emerging technology to a lot of the area. And, we're learning fast, and Southeast Michigan is learning fast with that, but not fast enough. Some of us are slow to change, and unfortunately, there's still a lot of resistance to this. And for whatever the FUD reasons out there, the fear, uncertainty, doubt that get put out there, that people tend to just give it an earshot. Oh, okay, I believe that, and then moving on, don't want to think about it anymore. I've been saying that Tesla needs a stronger presence in Michigan because this area can be very successful in eventually producing some good EVs, but we need to change. We need to change from the top down. My experience with Tesla and watching the Tesla community online for so many years brought me around to another employer, and I eventually got to work for the great Sandy Munro at Munro and Associates. They were just down the road from where I was working. I saw Sandy rant one day, and this guy was basically chastising the auto industry and the political area around it, and I totally agree with him. And I said, this needs to be said, and not enough people are standing up and saying that. Maybe this is me saying it too. We've got something new going on here. The UAW is trying to shake things up, and they need to. And people need to get paid better, not just in the unions, but at the technical level, at the engineering level, and everything that it's evolved around it. We can't keep having all our top brass take away all the profits and just walk away with it. They didn't earn it like guys like Elon Musk, Bezos, those guys have. When you're in a legacy company and you're just kind of jump the ranks and you're up in there and you're making the same old playbook decisions that everyone else has made, making those quarterly profits, making those things work, sacrificing your people in order to make those numbers is not a way to win. It's a short-term gain with long-term losses, and we are starting to see that now. Things are starting to hurt, and if this area goes into a bad economic drop like it did in 07, 08, it could be much worse if one or all of them either fall off the face of the earth or shrink down to very little. And those are very real possibilities right now. I do like what Jim Farley's doing at Ford. I think he's being the most honest of all of them. Mary Barra just talks like a politician. I mean, everything from the way she stands, the way she talks, the way she says a lot but answers nothing. It's very, very political. Guys like Sandy Munro have bucked that trend. And I think Jim Farley caught on to that and said, hey, we need some of this guy's help. And I think that partnership will help them out in the long run. But I'm hoping it's not too little too late. And unfortunately, disruptive changes happen very fast. And the auto industry has been playing this fast follow technique. And now they're jumping into an arena that they're not good at, and they need to be. As far as the workforce in Michigan, I think we can do it. But we need to learn to be more agile. And once again, Joe Justice, let's talk about Agile Systems and learn those methods. How do we do that? I don't know. There's going to be some trial and error. I think there needs to be more widespread breakdowns. We need to look at the auto industry in general. We need to break the silos that people work in. My experience at General Motors is very siloed. This is your job. You stay in the box. You don't go outside the box. You don't do anything outside that box because guess what? Someone else is going to get butthurt over it, and it's going to cause some crap. I've seen it personally many times over. In Agile system, you don't do that. It's like, hey, all hands on deck. Anybody who's free, we have a problem over here. Let's get a team together and let's get on that. And that keeps everyone active, everyone mobile, and everyone learning something new. And if you're in a job and you're not learning something new every day, I feel sorry for you. But maybe some people are good at that. Maybe some people just want that. There are roles for that specifically. However, we as a workforce need to become more adaptable and more ready to change. And not rest on our laurels. Yeah, we've done some great things in this world. Southeast Michigan has proven itself it can be an automotive leader, and I don't think we're there anymore, but I think we can get it back. So I'm going to try to wrap this up and see if we can hit a high note, but because I know we can do it. I understand the pain of the pain of the UAW, because I've been those guys where I've worked for far less money, right next to guys doing the exact same work as me, making twice as much and have much better benefits. I felt like I had to work harder to prove myself, and over time they just dangle that carrot out there. Oh, we'll hire you. Oh, no. How about now? Oh, we're going to hire you. Oh, no. Well, not conditions aren't right, but keep working hard. We're going to hire you. That can only go on so long. And they've been doing this more or less my entire life. And we can go back to Simon Sinek and we can talk about leaders eat last. And we can talk about finite and infinite games. And if you put those two lenses of knowledge on, you understand the problems that the auto industry is facing right now. They need good leadership. They need to be able to break the silos. They need to get more agile, and people working as teams can produce so much more work than every individual being for themselves. And we need to have loyalty and trust from the top to the bottom and the bottom up. And that'll regain the strength too. There was a day when you would go to one of the American auto plants, and if you saw anything outside that brand there, those people would get a bunch of crap. And don't ever be a foreign car. You look at it now, it doesn't matter. It's a pretty homogeneous parking lot where it's just a little bit of everything out there. There's no more loyalty, and the loyalty is gone because the top brass has not remained loyal to their employees because they've gotten into this hire and fire phase. UAW gets protected, and then they go after all the salary and contract personnel. And we just get caught in this flux. Things are good, everyone's hired, making lots of money. Oh, things go bad, we need to make our quarterly numbers, let's drop a bunch of people. And unfortunately, that's the cycle we've just gotten used to, and we accept that as normal. It never used to be, and it shouldn't be. Using people to balance the books, not a good thing. You can look at some of Munro and Associates literature, and they do have a picture of everything going from design all the way down to the personnel assembling, and you can see what the cost structure is. People assembling is a very small number, and I kept looking at that. It's like, if you design it properly up front, it should be easy to manufacture, and that manufacturing cost is minimal compared to the rest of the stuff going on. So understanding lean design that came from Dr. Demings, who is kind of, Sandy Munro is kind of the number one disciple of lean design. And then we see a company like Tesla, who has brought first principles thinking into it and it's kind of put lean design on steroids. And then an agile system of operating makes a large company work like a startup and becomes so incredibly efficient and so good at making things change and move rapidly and adapt. And it is an evolutionary thing. If you become very well adapted to one thing, and that's all you do, and then the environment changes, you'll probably die out unless you can adapt to it. The far more adaptable creatures will thrive and survive and multiply. While the very singular focused creatures, the very hyper adapted to one singular thing type creatures, they'll fall off and they'll die in an environmental change. And that's what disruptive innovation does. It creates an environmental change across the industry. That's it. So I tried to end on a high note, but I think I came back down. Anyway, I'm Jason from Pub Wisdom, and hopefully Michigan does well and survives this. And I know we can. I don't want to see things drop. Yeah, I live here, grown up here. It's a good place, good people. We need the loyalty to return, and that's a big start right there. Cheers from Pub Wisdom. Good night.